Welcome to Midday Prime. Over the next 1 hour, we'll bring you all the stories and updates from India and the world. Our top focus would be the Aero India 2021 show inaugurated today by Defence Minister Rajnath Singh in Bengaluru. Also, updates from the world of business and sports and some interesting stories that are making headlines. But first up, the big news at this hour. Rajya Sabha discusses motion of thanks on President's address. Discussion also includes farmers' issues as demanded by the opposition. 3 Aam Aadmi Party MPs sent out of the upper house due to unruly behaviour for the day. Lok Sabha also to discuss motion of thanks on the President's address. Ministry of External Affairs advises international celebrities to ascertain facts related to farmers' protests before sensationalizing anything on social media, asserts India's stand against propaganda. Supreme Court constituted expert committee on farm reform laws meets today. 2 farmer associations from Maharashtra also attended the meeting to present their views, while the Supreme Court refuses to hear the petition seeking probe into tractor rally violence. Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh inaugurates Asia's biggest aerospace and defence show. Aero India, centred around Aatmanirbharta, again brings to the world's attention state-sponsored and state-inflicted terrorism against India. Says India is prepared to defeat any misadventure at the border. Aatmanirbharta chosen as Hindi Word of the Year 2020 by Oxford University Press. The word saw a massive spike in popular usage after Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched the Aatmanirbhar Bharat campaign, emphasizing on self-reliance as a response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Army-headed government in Myanmar announces a new state administrative council, also reconstitutes Union Election Commission. UN Security Council holds closed-door consultations to arrive at a consensus statement. MEA, meanwhile, says that G7 ministers have been called to immediately end the state of emergency. Let's begin the show now with the big news at this hour, and discussion on motion of thanks on the President's address continued in the Rajya Sabha today. Initiating the discussion, BJP MP Bhuvneshwar Kaleta highlighted several measures taken up by the central government for the welfare of farmers. He asserted that the centre is ready to discuss every issue of the farmers through proper channels.
There had been no reduction of rights and facilities of the farmers. Through these agricultural reforms, the government has given new rights to the farmers. Many rounds of discussions are already taken place, and door is always open for further discussion so that this issue of farm laws can be resolved amicably.
During the discussion, BJP MP from Uttar Pradesh, Vijaypal Singh, said that Prime Minister Narendra Modi-led government has taken various steps for the welfare of farmers.
आबादी हमारी 18% है, भूमि हमारे पास 2.4% है, पानी हमारे पास 4.2% है। कम भूमि और इस कम पानी में कैसे हम $5 ट्रिलियन पर इसको पहुंचाएंगे, चुनौती भरा काम है। लेकिन प्रधानमंत्री जी ने जिस तरह से कृषि के क्षेत्र में उनकी नेतृत्व में सरकार ने कदम उठाए हैं, उससे ये बिल्कुल संभव है कि कृषि की आय भी बढ़ेगी और ये $5 ट्रिलियन की अर्थव्यवस्था भी होगी।
Meanwhile, the opposition has thanked the government for increasing the duration of the discussion from 5 hours to 15 hours.
राष्ट्रपति के मोशन ऑफ थैंक्स से पहले कोई बिजनेस नहीं लिया जाता, इसलिए हम सब लोग जितने विपक्ष के लोग हैं 18-19 पार्टियां मिलके हमने तय किया कि अगर मोशन ऑफ थैंक्स से पहले डिस्कशन किसानों का नहीं होता है तो जो डिस्कशन उस दिन होना चाहिए था किसानों के लिए ही, वो हम राष्ट्रपति जी के अभिभाषण में उसकी चर्चा करेंगे 5 घंटे। तो वो 5 घंटे जो किसानों की चर्चा करनी थी अलग से बिल्कुल स्टैंड अलोन वो हम चर्चा करेंगे माननीय राष्ट्रपति के अभिभाषण में, और वो 5 घंटे वहां बढ़ाए जाएं 15 घंटे। और सरकार का मैं धन्यवाद करता हूं कि उन्होंने हम सब की मांग मांगी।
Leader of Opposition Ghulam Nabi Azad also expressed happiness over successfully conducting the local body elections in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir.
जो भी लाल किले पे हुआ वो बिल्कुल नहीं होना चाहिए। वो लोकतंत्र के खिलाफ है, डेमोक्रेसी के खिलाफ है, लॉ एंड ऑर्डर की दुष्टि से भी खिलाफ। जहां प्रधानमंत्री देश को, दुनिया को संबोधित करते हैं और वहां हमारे नेशनल फ्लैग के साथ बेइज्जती की जाए, इंसल्ट की जाए, उसे बर्दाश्त नहीं किया जा सकता। ऐसे लोग जो उसमें इन्वॉल्व थे उनको कड़ी से कड़ी सजा दी जानी चाहिए। लेकिन मैं साथ में यह भी कहना चाहता हूं कि जो निर्दोष जो किसान लीडर्स निर्दोष, उनके खिलाफ उनको इम्प्लीकेट करने के, उनको फंसाने की बिल्कुल न कोशिश किया जाए, फिर उस पर दूसरा आंदोलन होगा।
Earlier in the day, the government and the opposition had agreed to discuss the issue of farmers. The duration of the discussion has been increased from 5 hours to 15 hours, like I said.
Observed that some members are using their mobile phones to record the proceedings of the House while sitting in the chamber. Such conduct is against parliamentary etiquette and is not expected from the honourable members. Members should desist from such unwarranted activities inside the chamber. Such unauthorized recording of the proceedings of House and its circulation in the social media may lead to breach of privilege and contempt of the House. Even the sections of the media who have now started using some of it, they have been advised please not to do it because that is not authorized, and then you will be liable for the consequences thereon. Keeping that in mind, I hope everybody will follow the rules.
Ghulam Nabi Azad also condemned the 26th of January violence at Red Fort in Delhi during the farmers' protest against the new farm laws. Meanwhile, Rajya Sabha Chairman M. Venkaiah Naidu asked 3 Aam Aadmi Party MPs to withdraw from the House for the day after ruckus emerged over the farmers' issues. The upper house was also adjourned for some time today after some of the MPs created ruckus at the time of the proceedings. Rajya Sabha Chairperson M. Venkaiah Naidu today instructed members of the House to not record the proceedings of the House using their mobile phones. The chairperson said recording the House proceedings and then circulating it on social media amounts to breach of privilege and contempt of the House. Lok Sabha will also continue discussion on the motion of thanks on the President's address. And let's now move on to our developing story. The 3-day mega event to showcase the prowess of aviation industry, Aero India 2021, has begun in Bengaluru. The theme of Aero India this year is Aatmanirbharta. Prime Minister Narendra Modi took to Twitter, calling Aero India a wonderful platform for collaboration of India's potential in defence and aerospace. In a tweet, PM said, and I quote, India offers unlimited potential in defence and aerospace. Aero India is a wonderful platform for collaborations in these areas. The Government of India has brought futuristic reforms in these sectors, which will add impetus to our quest to become Aatmanirbhar. Aero India 2021, the 3-day mega event to showcase the prowess of aviation industry, began in Bengaluru today. Aero India 2021 was inaugurated by Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh and commenced with a flying display at Yelahanka Air Force Station. The Aero Show included fly past and demonstrations. The theme of Aero India is Aatmanirbhar Bharat, and many made in India products and platforms such as LCH, a light combat helicopter, Tejas Mark 1A were showcased. The Aero India 2021 aims to forge partnerships for FDI in Indian defence corridors. Many leading defence manufacturing firms are exhibiting the latest platforms to grab attention and enter into business deals as well. While addressing the Aero India show, Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh said that the nation is vigilant and prepared to counter and defeat any misadventure to defend our people and the territorial integrity at all costs.
India also faces threats and challenges emanating from multiple fronts. India is a victim of state-sponsored and state-inflicted terrorism, which is now a global threat. We have long witnessed unfortunate attempts to employ force to change status quo along our unresolved border. India is vigilant and prepared to counter and defeat any misadventure to defend our people and the territorial integrity at all costs.
Singh also said that domestic manufacturing of bigger and complex defense platforms has now become the focus of India's defense policy under Aatmanirbharta Abhiyan.
540 exhibitors, including 80 foreign companies, defense ministers, delegates, service chiefs, and officials from more than 55 nations are participating in this event. It reflects the growing optimism of the global community and the level of confidence felt in the emerging capabilities of India. India today offers a unique opportunity in defense and aerospace manufacturing. This opportunity comes as a sangam of rising demand, greater innovation, conducive policy, and a maturing ecosystem in defense and aerospace manufacturing sector.
Rajnath Singh also said that the government of India has enhanced FDI in defense sector to attract more foreign investment into defense.
Recently, domestic manufacturing of bigger and complex defense platforms has now become the focus of our policy under the Aatmanirbharta Abhiyan. We plan to spend $130 billion on military modernization in the next 7 to 8 years. And we are encouraging foreign OEMs to set up wholly owned subsidiaries or enter into strategic partnership with the Indian companies. The government of India has enhanced FDI in defense sector up to 74%, which would act as a catalyst for foreign players to invest in India.
Mentioning India's initiative of a successful COVID-19 vaccination drive, Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh also said that India has endeavoured to bring out not one but 2 indigenous vaccines and started the largest vaccination drive to inoculate 270 million people.
Steering through the difficult times of COVID-19 pandemic, India has become a leading nation in the world to protect the precious life of its 1.35 billion people from the pandemic. India has endeavored to bring out not one but 2 indigenous vaccines, Covaxin, Covishield, and stated the largest vaccine drive to inoculate 270 million people. Our concern extends to people across boundaries, under which India offers more than 20 million doses to friendly countries.
Let's now take a look at some of the key highlights in terms of participation of the hybrid Aero India 2021. It is the 13th edition of the premier global aerospace exhibition, which has gotten underway. This is a 3-day exhibition. The inaugural day is today. 14 countries and 601 exhibitors are participating in Aero India 2021. In Bengaluru, there are 523 Indian and 78 foreign exhibitors. Besides that, since this is a hybrid event because of COVID-19 pandemic, 336 virtual exhibitors are also participating in Aero India 2021. Well, the thrust of what Rajnath Singh said in his inaugural address, he said that India is marching from Make in India to Make from the World, and that there is rising demand, greater innovation, conducive policies, maturing ecosystem in defense and aerospace manufacturing sector. So there is just the right kind of ecosystem that is there in defense and aerospace sector. $130 billion to be spent on military modernization over 7 to 8 years. So this is the kind of plan that was outlined by Defense Minister Rajnath Singh of investment of over $130 billion in the next 7 to 8 years. Domestic manufacturing of bigger and complex platforms is the focus of the defense policy. So the focus is on defense manufacturing, that is on self-reliance, that is on making India Aatmanirbhar as far as the aerospace and defense sector is concerned in terms of manufacturing, and also to focus on exports later. Many reforms have been brought in for conducive ecosystem exports, FDI and offset discharge. So many reforms since 2014 have already been brought in. This is what Rajnath Singh, our defense minister, said in the context of FDI, offset discharge, etc. Also, 74% FDI has been allowed through automatic route in the defense sector. This is through the automatic route, and there is another figure that we'll share with you for FDI through the government route that will come after that. 100% FDI has been allowed to the government route in the defense sector. So these are some of the reforms that have been undertaken by the Modi government since 2014. New by global manufacturer in India category of capital procurement has been introduced in the defense acquisition procedures in 2020. So you make outright purchases from a foreign firm and then you manufacture in India, either through a joint venture or through a subsidiary of that foreign firm or through an Indian agency. And this is what is new in the DAP. And with rising passenger and cargo traffic, demand for aircraft and related supply chains is increasing, and thus there is just the right kind of ecosystem to invest in India, he said. He said that huge investment potential in manufacturing of aero engines, sub-assemblies and MRO of aircraft are there in India. MRO stands for maintenance, repair as well as overhaul of aircraft. So there is a huge potential to manufacture in India for foreign firms. And that's what the appeal was of the defense minister, to come and invest in India in defense and aerospace manufacturing. He also invited business leaders from across the world to set up manufacturing units in India. So clear appeal going out by the defense minister on the inaugural day of Aero India 2021. HAL, he mentioned, backed the biggest Make in India defense contract to develop 83 new indigenous LCA Tejas Mark 1A at over 48,000 crore rupees. So this is the biggest Make in India defense contract that has been awarded to HAL in India. So we will have 83 new indigenous LCA Mark 1A aircraft made in India. Also, a high-level committee, he said, has been constituted to authorize exports of major defense indigenous platforms for faster approvals. So this committee will ensure that there is faster approvals for the purposes of exports of indigenous defense platforms, and thus there will be a fast-track approach that will be undertaken. Vision to make India one of the biggest countries in defense sector from design to production with participation of public and private sectors. So this is the vision that was outlined by Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh on the inaugural day of Aero India 2021. To make India one of the biggest countries in defense sector and to focus a lot on manufacturing as well as exports of defense platforms. Target of 1,75,000 crore rupees turnover, including export of 35,000 crore rupees in aerospace and defense goods and services by 2024. So look at the amount that India is aiming at by 2024, 1,75,000 crore rupees. Willing to assist countries in Indian Ocean region in times of natural calamities and security challenges. So Raksha Mantri is saying there that India's interests not just lie within its shores but also beyond its shores. India is a victim, he said, of state-sponsored and state-inflicted terrorism, which is now a global threat. So Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh pointing a finger towards across the border, that is towards Pakistan, saying that India is living in an ecosystem, or it is living in a kind of environment where the threat of terrorism is dangling over it all the time. India has long witnessed attempts to employ force to change the status quo along unresolved borders. So this was, of course, an indication to what China is doing along the line of actual control, where Chinese troops are in an eyeball-to-eyeball confrontation with the Indian defense forces in Ladakh. Well, to get more updates on what really transpired on day one of Aero India 2021, our correspondent Nandita Dagar joins us. Nandita, in the air display, did we see India's cutting-edge technology and capabilities in the defense sector being showcased?
Yes, very much so. And the theme of this year's Aero India, that is Aero India 2021, is Aatmanirbharta, which means self-reliance, not just in technology but also design, development and manufacturing. Therefore, India showcased some products such as the light combat helicopter, which is India's answer to if I could say that it is akin to an Apache. It is like an attack helicopter, much lighter than an Apache, and can be used in both roles, air to air as well as air to ground firing roles. You would have seen these kind of choppers in Hollywood movies. So this the light combat helicopter was of course showcased. Then there was the light utility helicopter, which will replace the aging cheetahs and chetaks of our Air Force and Navy. Also, the Tejas, nobody can forget the Tejas while mentioning India's Aatmanirbhar, because this is a huge project and it's been taking place. Tejas took its first flight in 2001, and since then it has had incident-free flights. There has been no accident on board a Tejas, and it is completely designed and developed by India, except for the engine. All its avionics, etc., have been designed by the Aeronautics Development Establishment of DRDO, and it is manufactured in-house by HAL at its plants. And yesterday we saw that the Defence Minister inaugurated the second plant or the second state-of-the-art facility, manufacturing facility near Bengaluru of the new Tejas Mark 1A. The Indian government, of course, has approved last month only in January. The Modi government, the cabinet had approved the purchase of 83 light combat aircraft Tejases, and these are above the earlier Tejases that we have in our inventory. These are the Tejas Mark 1A. So yes, considerable heft and the strength of India's innovation, design and capabilities very, very much visible in the skies above Yelhanka near Bengaluru.
Nadda, would you also say that Aero India 2021 has a lot of strategic significance as well, considering the defence ministers of Indian Ocean region have been invited here for a conclave, and this is happening for the first time in an Aero India show?
Yes, you're right. Actually, all the 4 Quad nations have a presence here, and in a very large numbers. You could say that the Japan, USA, India, and of course Australia, they have sent their high-level delegations here. And yes, the foreign ministers or defense ministers or industry or trade ministers, or either of these 3 ministers of countries such as Maldives, which is India's outpost in the Indian Ocean region, in the Arabian Sea, southern Arabian Sea. It's very important since the new regime in Maldives took office, so that you can say that India, Ukraine, these are countries in Central Asia who are visiting. They have Russia, which is a time-tested partner of India. Fair weather, foul weather, any weather, Russians have always stood by India. France, Russia, these are the countries. Of course, US companies such as Lockheed Martin and other high defense manufacturing firms from the USA, very big, hefty, multi-billion-dollar companies such as Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, etc. are present here. So yes, in an affirmation in the time of pandemic, when India took a bold step by making the air show, or deciding whether or not to conduct the air show, and then making it a hybrid one where there are seminars from virtually through video conferencing. There are meetings between various delegates as well as physical one-to-one meetings. So yes, furthering the business potential of our country, the infrastructure, the 2 defense corridors, attracting greater foreign direct investment. These are some things that this Aero India 2021 is geared up for.
Well, thank you, Nandita, for those updates from Bengaluru.
Thank you.
Well, moving on to National Prime. A new portal for monitoring Govardhan activities across the nation, Govardhan, was launched in New Delhi. Govardhan is an important component of ODF Plus under the Swachh Bharat Mission Phase 2. The Union Minister for Jal Shakti, Gajendra Singh Shekhawat, along with the Union Minister for Fisheries, Animal Husbandry and Dairying, Giriraj Singh, launched the new portal. One can have all information related to Govardhan activities in the country on this portal.
Dairy Development Board of Animal Husbandry and Dairying Department. All these schemes will play a very important role in achieving the goal of Govardhan. Govardhan envisages support to state governments with technical assistance and financial assistance up to rupees 50 lakh per district to help villages convert waste to wealth and improve environmental sanitation and curb vector-borne diseases in the process. Community ownership will be the guiding principle of Govt initiative.
Union Minister for Fisheries, Animal Husbandry and Dairying, Giriraj Singh, said that Govardhan activities are helping farmers explore opportunities in organic farming.
नेशनल डेयरी डेवलपमेंट बोर्ड उसका खाद बना रहा है, मार्केट कर रहा है, और आज पूरे दुनिया में लगभग 178 देश ऑर्गेनिक खाद की ओर जा रहे हैं, जिसकी चर्चा माननीय करेंगे। और भारत भी धन्यवाद योग्य है कि यहाँ ऑर्गेनिक खेती की ओर ग्रोथ बहुत अच्छा है। अभी भी हम 18% पर हैं, और ये जो 30 करोड़ जानवर हैं देश के अंदर में, ये 30 करोड़ कैटल है, बेफेलो हैं, और एवरेज अगर हम 7 किलो गोबर लेते हैं तो ये गोबर धन कितना बड़ा धन किसानों के अंदर आएगा।
Union Petroleum and Natural Gas Minister Dharmendra Pradhan said that the objective of the government is to convert cattle dung and solid agricultural waste into compost and biogas.
प्रधानमंत्री जी की जो कल्पना है, आने वाले 5 साल के अंदर हम गोवर्धन योजना जैसे इनिशिएटिव से जो आज वेस्ट है, जो आज पर्यावरण को चुनौती देता है, जो स्वास्थ्य खराब करता है, उसी में से एथेनॉल, कॉम्प्रेस बायोगैस और बायोडीजल, ये तीनों बायोफ्यूल से 1 लाख करोड़ रुपया की ऑल्टरनेटिव इनकम हम किसानों को देने की व्यवस्था कर दिए हैं। सीबीजी और इस पोर्टल में जानकारी जो रहेगा उसकी दिशा में एक बड़ी कदम है। एथेनॉल जो 6 साल पहले 0.67% हम अपनी आवश्यकता की ले पाते थे, इसी साल ये 8.5% हो गया, और आने वाले 3-4 साल के अंदर ये 20% तक भी चले जाएगा।
Union Agriculture Minister Narendra Singh Tomar said that the government has taken a lot of steps for increasing farmers' income. Govardhan scheme is one of them. The government is making serious efforts to make an economic model for farmers along with development of the country.
आज हम जब ODF प्लस की ओर बढ़ रहे हैं तो उस दिशा में यह एकीकृत पोर्टल निश्चित रूप से मील का पत्थर साबित होगा। गोवर्धन जो है ये निश्चित रूप से बड़ी संपदा है, लेकिन केमिकल फर्टिलाइजर आने के बाद गोबर की दुर्गति हो गई, लेकिन अब इसको संपदा के रूप में परिवर्तन किया जाए, इस दृष्टि से सरकार के प्रयत्न हैं और इस काम को आगे बढ़ाए, जिससे हम स्वच्छ भारत मिशन के लक्ष्यों को भी प्राप्त कर सकें और साथ ही साथ इसको एक आर्थिक मॉडल के रूप में विकसित कर सकें।
The expert committee constituted by the Supreme Court on agricultural reform laws is meeting in New Delhi. The committee members Anil Ghanvat, Dr. Pramod Joshi and economist Ashok Gulati and other officials are attending the meeting. 2 farmer organizations from Maharashtra are also participating in the meeting. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court has refused to wade into tractor rally incident, citing the government's statement that law will take its own course. Chief Justice of India asked 3 petitioners to withdraw their PIL for a probe into the incident, saying the investigations will take place. The Ministry of External Affairs has responded to recent comments made by foreign individuals and entities on the ongoing farmers' protests. Issuing a statement, the ministry has urged that before rushing to comment on such matters, all facts be ascertained and one should have a proper understanding of the issues at hand. The MEA further stated that the temptation of sensationalist social media hashtags and comments, especially when resorted to by celebrities and others, is neither accurate nor responsible. And now Alok Bansal, Director India Foundation, is joining us for more on this. Mr. Bansal, your thoughts on the statement coming out from the MEA. We are aware of how certain individuals and celebrities have made comments on the ongoing farmer protests, but India asserting itself, saying that first you should be aware of facts, you should ascertain facts and then only comment.
See, there is no doubt that many of these so-called international celebrities who have made statements on farm agitation are grossly unaware of the facts. There is actually a concerted campaign by certain vested quarters to propagate myths about this farm agitations. And many of these international celebrities who have no time to do their own research get carried away by what they hear or see on social media. And I think MEA has clearly and rightly told them to understand the agitation, know the facts for themselves before commenting on this significant issue.
Mr. Bansal, in the past also we've seen, for instance, I remember how the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, had made a statement, and then also MEA had made a similar statement saying that first facts must be ascertained and then only comments should be made. So India has made it a point to clarify itself after such controversial statements have been made by various individuals, entities, even those holding high office overseas. Every time this happens, India has asserted itself.
See, as far as Canada's Prime Minister's case was concerned, there was another angle that we need to understand, that besides being misinformed, Canada also has a substantive Indian diaspora, primarily from Punjab. And some of these people from Punjab have gone onto the bandwagon of Khalistani organizations. And these Khalistani organizations have been extraordinarily active as far as Canada is concerned. And since they constitute a significant vote bank, very often Canadian politicians tend to sway with the tide and in fact make such statements. I think Canadian Prime Minister's statement was, I think, pandering to his vote banks, and that I think we should take strict cognizance of, and that's why Government of India is fairly straightforward in commenting on that particular thing. And fortunately, I think subsequently there has been no follow-up from Canada to a very great extent.
Absolutely, and in fact I'm reading from the statement, Mr. Bansal, it says that it is unfortunate to see vested interest groups trying to enforce their agenda on these protests and derail them. This was egregiously witnessed on the 26th of January, India's Republic Day, a cherished national commemoration. The anniversary of the inauguration of the Constitution of India was besmirched and violence and vandalism took place in the Indian capital. So India is giving a holistic view, a comprehensive view of the developments that have taken place. So for all those who may not be informed about various aspects which are important to really what happened on the 26th of January, this should give the complete picture, isn't it?
Undoubtedly. In fact, the sad part is that many in India itself are actually misinformed about these agitations. They really don't know what the real issues are, how farmers are benefited by these resolutions, and how the middlemen have actually hijacked the entire agitation. And now, since people in India itself are misinformed, to expect people abroad who have very short memory span or attention span is extremely limited to be well aware of what the circumstances are is very unlikely. And more significantly, they do not understand the significance of national days like Republic Day, when India actually became a republic, and we Indians take immense pride on the celebrations on the Republic Day. And I think the sanctity of this particular day was vitiated by these demonstrators who not only broke through the police cordon, deviated from the path that they had agreed to abide by, deviated from the timings that they were given, and then went and ransacked national monuments, indulging in sacrilege. I think these facts, many of the people abroad have not understood, and I think that needs to be highlighted to them, because many of them actually comment without, as I said, without knowing the facts for themselves.
Mr. Bansal, do you welcome the fact that the MEA in its statement has said that a very small section of farmers in parts of India have some reservations about these reforms, just putting things in the right perspective so that things are not blown out of proportion in people's perceptions?
There is no doubt. I think it is for all to say the number of farmers that exist in India is huge figure. Overwhelming majority of India's population still is dependent on agriculture. But the number of people who are agitating belong to a very few states, and there also only just a few people in those states are actually demonstrating against these reforms.
And India, would you say, in its diplomacy has not really crossed the lines? For instance, we know what happened on the 6th of January in the US Capitol when there was unprecedented violence and ransacking and rampaging really through the Capitol Hill, but India has always ensured that all of its diplomatic statements are just well informed, and every time we have taken a very, very responsible position in any statements that we have made post any incidents that have happened the world over. So does India really present an example to the world on how to react after instances?
There is no doubt that we have behaved like a mature democracy, and our diplomatic statements have been very considered and very, very restrained, even when major catastrophic events have taken place in other countries. And I think other countries should also understand this, these subtle nuances, and I think refrain from commenting on internal issues of India unless they are very well informed about it. This tendency of the so-called celebrities from the glamour world making statements without understanding the subtle nuances of a particular issue is unfortunate, and I think this needs to be rectified.
Absolutely. So understand the nuances and only then comment. Thank you so much, Alok Bansal, for sharing your perspective on this.
Thank you.
Let's move on now. BJP's National President JP Nadda is in Kerala on a two-day visit to give shape to the poll strategy for the upcoming Kerala Assembly elections. This is his first official visit to Kerala after taking charge as the national president of the party. BJP's national president received a grand reception at Thiruvananthapuram airport today, where hundreds of party workers welcomed him with traditional art forms. JP Nadda attended a roadshow started from airport to the party state headquarters, and after the roadshow he will be attending the core committee of state leadership, where he will be briefed on the election preparedness and the political trends to be leveraged. BJP's national president will also be attending a meeting with elected local body representatives today. And in news just coming in, the government has issued a notice to Twitter to comply with its order to remove contents or accounts related to farmer genocide. Correspondent Vishal Baristo joins us on the phone line for more on this. Vishal, fill us in with what the government has done.
But the government has taken this thing very seriously, that there's a hashtag in favor saying that the farmers are there's a genocide against farmers, and the government has taken this very seriously and have asked Twitter to comply by the norms of the country, and if they do not comply or block this account, then they would be facing the penal action. And law and order is an internal affair of the country, and the government has also said that these fake news should be stopped, because quoting half a dozen examples from the Supreme Court judgments that this is not something to do with the farmers, the way the violence was rather committed in an organized way. The national property was vandalized, people were taken to ransom, the law and order was taken to ransom, and even the Rajput was also attacked, and the national pride of our country, the tricolor, was also disrespected. So these things the government has given to Twitter and have asked Twitter to immediately block that account, or else they would be facing legal action.
Is there any estimate, Vishal, that the government has on how many Twitter accounts really posted tweets with that hashtag, and has any timeline been given to Twitter to respond?
Well, we have to wait for the details, but all we get to know that the government has taken this this matter very seriously with the Twitter, and they have asked Twitter to comply by the rules of the land, and they have also asked them that if they do not block these accounts, then they would be facing penal action. So we would be, we need to wait for some more time to find out the details of the notice.
Absolutely. So we need to still wait for details, but Twitter has been told to take off those Twitter accounts that tweeted with an objectionable hashtag of farmer genocide, and Twitter is now expected to respond to what the government directive is. Thank you, Vishal, for those updates. Well, let's now take a look at what's making news across the globe. An update now from Myanmar. The United Nations Security Council held closed consultations to arrive at a consensus statement on Myanmar's developments. According to the UN press briefing, the special envoy of the Secretary General, Christine Schraner-Burgener, urged the Council members to send a clear signal in support of democracy in Myanmar. Meanwhile, G7 ministers have called upon the military to immediately end the state of emergency, restore power to the democratically elected government, release all those unjustly detained, and respect human rights and rule of law. The G7 members have also reiterated their stand on the Myanmar issue for them to see a democratic future. Earlier, the regime in Myanmar, headed by the army, had announced a new state administrative council. The council, headed by the Army Chief General Min Aung Hlaing, has 11 members, out of which 8 are from the military. The military government has announced that the Union Election Commission will be reconstituted for implementing duties and functions. Following the updates in Myanmar, hundreds of people from Sydney's Myanmar community, alongside supporters of the National League for Democracy, protested in Sydney today against the military coup in the country. The protesters were also protesting against the sudden detention of Aung San Suu Kyi earlier this week. Holding placards and portraits of the Nobel laureate, protesters demanded immediate release of all political detainees and for the military to protect the people of Myanmar. Earlier, Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison had said that the reports of Myanmar's military seizing power were disturbing developments. US President Joe Biden signed 3 executive orders yesterday that aim at his predecessor Trump's hardline immigration policies. Biden has established a task force designed to reunite families separated at the US-Mexico border. The latest orders build on the actions taken in Biden's first days in office and begin to provide a clearer picture of the administration's immigration priorities. Biden's executive order on legal immigration calls for a review of a Trump-era rule that made it harder for poorer immigrants to obtain permanent residency in the U.S. During his presidential campaign, Biden pledged to set up a task force focused on identifying and reuniting families separated at the US-Mexico border under the Trump administration's controversial zero-tolerance policy. The administration's new task force stems from that promise. Russian opposition leader and fierce Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny was sentenced to 3.5 years in prison on Tuesday in a court proceeding that he condemned as politically motivated. Navalny made a heart gesture several times as he stood in the defendant's cage. Navalny's wife Yulia and several of his supporters were there to hear the court rule he had violated the terms of his parole, although he has said his prison term would be shortened as a result of time he had already served under house arrest. One of President Vladimir Putin's most prominent critics, Navalny, was arrested at the Russian border on the 17th of January after returning from Germany, where he had been recovering from being poisoned with a military-grade nerve agent. Navalny's allies called on their supporters to immediately protest against the court's ruling in central Moscow. Also, Navalny's lawyer has said that the politician would appeal against the ruling. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos is to step down as chief executive of the e-commerce giant that he started in his garage nearly 27 years ago. Amazon on Tuesday said founder Jeff Bezos would step down as CEO and become executive chairman. The decision comes as the company reported its third consecutive record profit and quarterly sales above $100 billion for the first time. The transition slated for the third quarter will make current cloud computing chief Andy Jassy Amazon's next chief executive officer. Amazon shares were up less than 1% in after-hours trading yesterday. International students from over 200 universities across China have again demanded a clear date for the return to their universities in China who have been stuck outside China for the last 1 year. Venting out their frustration and despair in another open letter on Twitter, students argued that they cannot keep paying school fees for online degrees which will not be recognized in their countries. They said students are planning a demonstration on no return, no school fees without giving any further details about it. The letter appealed to the Chinese authorities to allow them as epidemic control measures for traveling are already in place. Foreign students also said they are ready to take COVID tests, antibody tests and even vaccination if that helps them return. They say that online studies are not practically possible and these will not be recognized also in their countries. They further argued that the US, Europe and Australia are calling back students, then China can also call the international students back. They also expressed that China is showing its inability to include a small number of international students compared to the massive efforts it has shown in tackling the pandemic. Chinese Foreign Ministry said that the pandemic is still severe and countries formulate epidemic prevention measures according to their national conditions. It said China would study the return of foreign students to resume their study. A SpaceX Starship prototype rocket exploded on landing after an otherwise successful high-altitude experimental launch from Boca Chica in Texas. The Starship SN9 that blew up on its final descent, like the SN8 destroyed earlier. It was a prototype for the heavy-lift rocket being developed by SpaceX to carry humans and 100 tons of cargo on future missions to the Moon and Mars. And now it's time for our next segment, Life Prime, where we bring you stories from the world of art, culture, cinema, fashion, science and innovation. Stories that are bringing smiles, stories that are changing lives. Jordan's first dwarf team is ready for world stage. The team was founded in 2019 to challenge the stigma around dwarfism in the Arab world. The team is now preparing for international tournaments. The team goalkeeper said this, that will encourage people with dwarfism to get out of their homes and go around the world.
الشعب الاردني او الشعب العالم العربي كلهم بفكروا انه ايش هذول مين هذول متوقع مين هذول في ناس ما بيشوفونا في ناس متفوقه كمان ببيوتهم يعني ورجينا ولفينا العالم كله وطلعنا وتوينا وعملنا انه لا تخبوا حالكم جوا اطلعوا برجوا حالكم.
And on that note, we come to the close of this edition of Midday Prime. News and updates will continue on DD India. Stay tuned.